Welcome back to the shop and to the channel. Now that we have all of these oil passages open and clean, we can start to fish new wicking felt through these holes. We're going to get started here with the left front passage from the reservoir. It only feeds two different outputs, one on the front way and one on the rear way. I'm going to try feeding some twine through these ports using a shop vac. I've done this before when I've needed to fish wire through conduit, where I'll feed a piece of string through it using a vacuum cleaner and tie the wire onto the other end. I'm thinking this might work the same way. Well, that seemed to work okay. I'll go ahead and cut the string here and do the same thing from the reservoir to the port on the rear way. I decided to pre-soak this oil wick in some oil, obviously, thinking that the oil in the wick itself might provide a little bit of lubrication and help me get it through these passages. So I just tied a little slip knot, simple slip knot in the end of the string. I'll put that around the wick and get it good and secured. So now the trick here is to pull on one end of the string and try to feed the wick now down into those passages and out the other end. And everything was actually going really well. It was hanging up a little until it wasn't. With about an inch and a half to go, the wick broke off inside the passage. Luckily, I was able to pull the wick back out through the front, and I just need to fish my twine back through the passage. Well, for the second try, I think I'm going to go the other direction. I'll start from the port coming out in the way and pull it into the reservoir. I'm also putting a second knot about an inch down from the first one, hoping that it will spread out some of the forces that string is putting on the felt. And I'm just keeping enough tension on the string to pull it through and then feeding it from the other end. There we go. That seemed to work a little bit better. I do want to bring it out a little bit further so there's plenty of room for that felt to sit in the bottom of the reservoir. And I think we'll do the same thing for the front port. We'll go from the way side and pull it into the reservoir. Having a little bit of trouble here. It feels like the knot is getting caught on something, so I'm going to pull this back out. I'm going to rethink, maybe I will go back and come in from the reservoir side. Damn it. And of course it broke again. Now it's kind of stuck in there. I got to figure out how to fish this out. Well, luckily it broke at a point where I was able to get some tweezers down there and pull it back through and keep the line intact, so I still have that within the passage. Well, that seemed to be worse than the first time, so I'm going to go back and try to pull this in from the ways and down up and into the reservoir. I realized as I was pulling on that string, the friction I imagine between it and the other felt I've already pulled through started pulling it deeper down out the reservoir. So it took a second and pulled it back. I'll have to keep an eye on that for the other ones.
Oh, you son of a...
No! God, please, no! No! No!
Okay, need to take a break from that and get an easy win. So I'm going to go ahead and feed the felt that goes from the top of the ways down to the underside. This is just a straight piece of 1/8 inch oil felt cord and no string needed. All right, we're going to switch gears here and go over here to the right side of the reservoir. There's 4 felts that need to be fished from the ports into the reservoir, starting here with the one on the front. One of the key changes I made here is I did not soak these felts in any oil, so these are dry. I have the feeling that the oil actually made the felts more prone to tear. Well, that went pretty smoothly, so I'll take a pair of scissors now and trim this off a little bit, leaving me some room to trim it later. Well, I'm going to go ahead and try to get the longest one out of the way now. This is the longest felt cord for the saddle. This one starts underneath the bearing for the table feed mechanism, goes to the back of the saddle, takes a left turn, goes down a little ways, and takes another left turn to go underneath the saddle toward the front before turning up to come out of the reservoir. We'll put a couple of extra knots in here, again hoping that this will alleviate some of the pressures of just a single knot. And with that blind hole exposed on the back, I can use that to fish some of this cord out through the back, so I'm not fishing the entire length and trying to pull it from the front through all these different turns. I'm also taking advantage of this open hole on the side. So again, I'm not pulling this felt around a sharp corner inside the saddle. I can pull it out through the side, and that'll give me a straight shot then to the next turn. And then doing the same thing with the next plugged hole. With that open, I can fish the felt through that way before taking the hard left to the front of the saddle. Well, in order to build myself a little bit of confidence and get an easy win, I'm going to go to the shortest felt in the saddle, and that's this one here. It loops between 2 holes that are about 2 inches apart, one coming from the table power feed bearing, and the other one it leads to is for a rotary table takeoff shaft. I don't have that shaft, so technically I could have left this felt out and it wouldn't make any difference in the way that I'm going to be using this machine, but I figured for the next guy that may own this thing, it'd be nice to have that in there in case they ever did get a rotary table and wanted the takeoff shaft. Next, we're going to go ahead and feed the felt into this other bearing for the power feed. But I noticed as I was pulling this one through that it was also pulling through the felt from the way that I had already put in. So I was pulling it back out, and yeah.
Ah, you mother...
Well, I ultimately did end up getting this long piece of felt run through the saddle. It took a little time and patience. And rather than bore you with all that, I guess you'll just have to take my word for it. I did lose some of the footage of me working on this. I'm not sure exactly what happened. I know part of what happened was I got sick of bumping into the camera, so I moved them and turned them off. But I was able to finally get them all fed through the reservoir. That was quite an ordeal. Well, I couldn't leave that one broken piece alone that I was trying to fish back out, so I pulled it all the way out and went ahead and replaced it. One of the felt cords on the right side was a little bit shorter than my target. I really wanted it to be able to sit flat on the bottom of the reservoir for a couple of inches so that I knew that it was going to soak up oil. It'll reach, but kind of barely. So just kind of give it a little bit more insurance. I took some fine steel wire and wrapped it around all of the pieces of felt. That should guarantee that any oil that gets up in there will get spread across all four cords. For the felt pads on the ways, I got this felt pad that's 3/16 of an inch thick, made a punch out of some scrap steel, and just smacked it with a hammer to give me that 1-inch circle that'll fit in the pocket. These did end up being a little bit thick. I should have gotten thinner felt pad, so I ended up shaving them down with a razor blade to make sure that they didn't come too far past the surface of the ways. With all the felt cord now thread through these passages, I am going to go ahead and plug these things back up with some set screws. I did put a little Teflon tape around them, probably not necessary, but I wanted to make sure that there was any loose oil in the bottom of here, that it would stay in the passage rather than leak out of the holes. And before I plug these holes on the back, I'm going to go ahead and fill up these passages as much as I can with some oil so that these felt cords now get a chance to soak it up while the machine is sitting waiting to get turned back on. Well, I think that's going to do it for this video. This was extremely challenging getting those felt cords in there, but this was definitely necessary as what was in there was just junk. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget the bell icon so you'll know when the next video drops. As always, I really do appreciate you taking the time out to watch this video, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.